Hey folks, welcome back. Been a little while. I've been doing like I said I would, and I feel great. Much better. Hope y'all are doing well too. Today, we're gonna return to DMT, but only for a short time. We'll also be checking out a run of Blackwing Lair today, and I want to talk a bit about speedrun tactics, not just for your farm, but for your raid night. We've got a lot to cover, so without further ado, let's get right into this. Enjoy. Alright, so first things first. We're going to do a quick run of Diremaul Tribute, and we've gotten a summon back here from our friend. We've gotten some Mage Water, and we've even gotten some Lesser Invisibility Potions, so I'm very thankful to my friend for that. I'm a little bit rusty. I usually don't really farm unless I owe someone, so given that I'm a little bit rusty, we'll see some shenanigans on this run. I'll put up my Frost Reflector like I always do nowadays to cheese this first area. Then we're going to remember to use our Lily Root, or our Lay, summon our pet, and get going. I did pick up a bat, but pet passive is not where it needs to be on my pet bar, so I can't recall it to where it needs to go. I do not have the keybind set up, so I'm just going to jump back up here and feign death. We've got to res the thing already. Poor Zora, as he's now named, as yet another victim of my incompetence. This happens every time I take a break, even for a day. It's the little things that you forget that slip away from you, and it's the little things that'll come back to bite you in the butt so hard in DMT, especially. Anyway, we've got the bat res. This time I've got passive where it needs to be. I would never recommend running without a wolf. It causes a lot of trouble unless you really know what you're doing. So, for repeated farms, runs of this place, I can't recommend anything besides a wolf. But since I'm only doing one run before the raid night, I'm arbitrarily running with a bat. Anyway, we've not feigned death after that pack. We're just going to trail it behind us while we continue on. Because I like to do this area this way now. I like to scatter that one, hop up here, feign death here. Even if it fails, this is a safe spot. No waiting required. No shifting uncomfortably around the pack. The eye is moving away as we enter this area. But we'll catch up to it. We'll drop our freezing trap here, send the bat in, bring it back. Hopefully we'll not get crippled. Seems we're in the clear. The eye is just going to go all the way over there. We can feign death right here, and we're going to play it very safe, of course, because we don't have a wolf with us, we can't do any speedrun shenanigans. I mean, there are little things that we can do, like the Frost Reflector in the first area, and moving through the courtyard there, but we do need to take it slow where we must. Now that the eye's out of the way, we'll select the Warlock behind us, drop the freezing trap, and send the bat in. You also may have noticed that my bat has bite. You'll have to ignore that. I gave him close to my cat specialization for the sake of simplicity while leveling his loyalty. But obviously, this is inefficient. Here's his actual specialization that I'm going with. I'm going with Screech, Growl, and Dive as his actives. Spell resistance is geared towards Molten Core and Blackwing Lair for Spell Cleave. And armor, a little bit of armor, for Physical Cleave. Hello there, Slipkick. That is the worst possible place I could be right now. We'll get him, we'll get the Reavers around the corner, and we'll send him over at that far pack. Or try to. That did not work too well. The bat just got murdered. There comes the eye. I'll have to feign death right here. Great. Alright, now we can just get up here, put Cheetah up, and... oh, I'm entering combat. It seems the pack in the hallway is aggroing back onto me, probably because the Doomguard got stuck in the Frost Trap. Yet another little thing that I forgot. Well, we'll revive our pet right here, and... oh no, I just pulled the pack across the ramp! Go, Bat! Flee! You only have a little bit of HP, but as long as you flee with all your might... oh no, the eye is summoning something, I gotta take that out. Gotta take that out. Oh man, the entire room's coming for me. Feign Death is up at 3, 2, 1. Cheetah's up. Feign Death. I cannot believe that worked. Well, no harm, no foul. Cripple is done, so we'll pop our Lesser Invisibility Potion. By the way, this is the specialization that I'm rolling with right now. It's not the ideal raid specialization, but it's got talents that I like. Nevertheless, it's worth bringing up because I do not have pathfinding, and yet lesser invisibility is perfectly serviceable. As you can see, if a little bit tight, it is still serviceable. Here we go to the blast door. Onwards to the blast door. We got a Reaver on us, but we can scatter that, and it seems the Warlock is on us as well. So I don't really feel comfortable being here, so I'll feign death right here. I don't really like this either. I guess I'll get up and open the door. This is probably a decision better made quicker, but I really don't feel like waiting around. We'll delay them a little bit. We'll delay that Warlock's casts. We'll try to scatter shot their Doomguard. I hit the Reaver. I've got the PvP trinket up, so we'll wing-clip the Doomguard instead, move into the hallway. I'll throw out an Iron Grenade just to stall things a little bit further. Feign Death is up in 2, 1, 0. And hit again, it works. With a little bit of luck, this is very, very simple, easy. And if not, then you have a good graveyard run to think about your mistakes and what you should do differently next time. Usually that's how it goes for me. The first run is some kind of mess. And then I wake up and do the second run much more efficiently. I've left the Doomguard with a parting aim shot. We'll feign death right here. The bat is safe, dismissed, despawned. If injured, we'll mend it up here. And this will be the last spell before the king. Assuming there are no memes that occur, such as Intimidating Shout. It seems my bat is well past the Intimidating Shout range. Here we go on the king. Now if you got a wolf, you could Furious Howl, jump down. It would be a good idea to not mend. But since I've got a bat, there's no Furious Howl to be had. So I've mended him up before jumping down here. We're going right into the aim shot. It is Priest Cho today. He's put up the shield, but we will continue to pursue the king and fire off that aim shot. He did take the bait, he did charge, so we got the auto multi off. We'll launch one more Viper Sting, and we'll feign death right here. Priest Cho can be drained of mana more quickly than any other Cho, I believe. So in that sense, he's fairly convenient. I still regard him as the most annoying of the Chos, because you do need to keep him relentlessly vipered in order to prevent him from shielding at all. But at least he won't be spamming Mind Blasts at you. Mostly. Ouch. That's 2 Mind Blasts in a row. That hurts a lot. I totally forgot to switch to my DPS gear, so I've switched during that feign death. I've taken the opportunity. And now we've got the Devil's Sore Eye equipped, if not ready. We'll sync up the multi-shot to get that, get the aggro on Cho. Was not able to get an aim shot off there. We get another Viper Sting off on Cho. It seems he's totally And I'll feign death right here, because I've been able to eat and drink and recover that way. I've reapplied a Hunter's Mark on the king. We'll put up Devil's Sore Fury. It seems that he stayed around the corner to charge my pet from melee range. Unfortunate, we lost the cast of that aim shot, but we did get quick shots. Too bad we couldn't really make use of it, though. We'll keep another Viper Sting out on Cho. Repeat, and we're at even higher HP without even using a bandage. The aim shot went off that time, and this time the King Gorduk did not charge my pet. I've gotten aggro on Cho. He has put another shield up, but hopefully the King will charge my pet. I got the aim shot off at least, so that broke the shield. No charge though. I've topped myself off though with that final feign death. We'll start the aim shot here. Devil's Sore Eye up in 45. Shouldn't need it. We'll send the bat after the king once again. Hopefully he'll take the bait, he'll charge. There it is, we'll fire out the auto shot. Another feign death. We'll drink right there, and pop back out into another aim shot. At least this fight is going well, besides forgetting to put on the DPS gear at the very start. That's something that I always forget, on at least the first run. The king's pretty low. I could just kite him to death here, and sure, why not? I don't really feel like feigning death again. It's on cooldown anyway. He charged me, so we're down here now. This isn't a very comfortable vantage point. We would rather be up there because we have the defense mechanism of jumping down and abusing the terrain if we find ourselves in a tough spot. So I'm going to skip past any BS and go straight up here. There's a Mind Blast coming out, so I toggle Cheetah off. We'll keep Cho concussive shot as much as possible. He's meleeing us. Here's the king charging me again, knocking me down, but he's even lower. Going to auto Arcane, Serpent, auto, put Hunter's Mark back up. Let's pop the Lily Root and... oh heck, here's this Ice Cream Metal Priest, Joe! Feign death, feign death, feign death, feign death, feign death! Ha! Who was scared? I wasn't scared. You were scared. We'll pop the last shots in the king's back and wrap up this fight. Phew, that was a bit of a clincher, but we've earned ourselves some loot, so let's go collect it. We'll not forget to talk to Chromaggus. We'll get the king buff, and here's the loot. 4 healing potions. Nice meme, the absolute minimum. But I guess it's what I deserve for this incredibly scuffed run. There is an unlocked chest, at least, hiding behind this here pack. Seems it's got a green in it. That's always a pleasant surprise. And while we prepare this run for folks coming to get buffs, barring the fact that I completely forgot to wait 20 minutes or so before killing the king to make the eyes friendly, I want to lay down some preliminary info about the actual focus of today's episode. How you, as an individual hunter, can help to speed up your entire raid group. Now, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I'm not really the sort to speedrun. I'm a bit of a klutz if you haven't noticed. Speedruns must be precise and they tend to be stressful. I'm all on board with improving in general, but when it comes to mastering and executing mechanics reliably for an extended period of time, to the degree required to speedrun, well, it's a bit beyond me, I think. I don't suppose that's relevant though, since, and I guess I should make this distinction, we're not looking to push our guildies into that sort of situation. That sort of concerted effort requires the input of guild leadership. Rather, what we're trying to do is improve the guild in a general sense. We want to motivate our guildies, not burn them out. If they enjoy what they're doing, we'll continue to do it. We'll see some pulls and marking and other stuff we can do later when the raid begins, but until then I'd like to talk a little bit about politics. Disregard what you may associate with the subject. I'm in agreement that we could do without the typical vitriol. Essentially, politics in the sense I'm referring to it is the art, the science of persuasion. It's a fascinating and useful topic. They say that politics is downstream from culture, and if we want to organically create a culture or foster a budding one that encourages effort and efficiency and see it develop into guild habit or even policy, we hunters are uniquely capable of providing the requisite incentive. For instance, if the melee are going to slack on getting their buffs, then offer DMT buffs for free. Once they see their numbers rise in raids, then they may not be able to live without them. My guildies began running at random times, usually early in the day, to the mountain with their buffs when there were no organized efforts to get them. When things improved that much, when a small number of individuals came to raid with buffs, then the rest were inspired to get them, and now we tend to run as a group, closer to the time the raid begins. However, with buff wars and such going on my server, there are sometimes people lose their buffs before getting to raid, or get sacrificed pointlessly on Vael, and it can be tremendously frustrating and demotivating. At that point, it's a matter of encouraging our fellow raiders, so we all try our best, even if some of us don't have buffs. They may not be so capable of pursuing that coveted parse, but if they perform their role, they can still contribute. As another example, if your guildies are idling often between trash packs, look for the opportunity to pull them faster one week. If possible, you should do so after witnessing your guild's typical raid night routine, so you have a better idea of how you can improve upon it. So when Molten Core or Blackwing Lair are finished that much faster, they won't stand to go any slower. Again, however, you cannot allow your pace to wind up a detriment. If the healers lack mana, if you accidentally pull Gar with that Core Hound, if you pull 2 Death Talon Hatchers in the Suppression Room, or if you pull that Firewalker pack in Molten Core after a Core Hound just dropped your whole raid stamina, and some people wind up dead, then you may set yourself and your guild back. Whatever you do in your attempts to encourage the raid, it's imperative that you operate with strict attention to the way your guild wants to do things. If you're not the one pulling, don't step on your fellow hunter's toes. You can talk with him about it, maybe give it a shot yourself if he's absent a week, but don't put yourself in a position you don't belong in. If your guildmaster, for whatever reason, doesn't want to jump down at the beginning of Molten Core, comply. Pull along the normal path as efficiently as you can, and maybe see if the lust for a speedier raid night changes his mind later. If the healers need a break, for goodness sake, don't pull another Hatcher. But maybe consider investing in a Lay of Lilies for each of those healers between raids, so they have a few free mini potions each raid night to pop off if they're behind on trash. And if your tanks insist on playing Fury Prot, consider picking up a bat and coordinating with your guild's warriors to make use of maximum strength Screech and demoralizing Shout together. There are many things you can do as an individual to help speed your raid along, but your raid is the sum of each raider therein. So you can't fight the will of the raid, and especially not the raid leaders. Instead, shift the will of the raid in a desirable direction with your very own will, and more importantly, with your actions. You can facilitate the raid in these ways you may, without shaking up the raid's environment or habitual strategies. The strategic changes your guild may move towards begin at the individual level. Therefore, the impetus for organically speeding up your raids lies at the individual level. Isn't this a fun topic? This is what I love about vanilla. Interacting with so many different people in raids is so interesting. The content may not be terribly difficult, but it's the social aspect that's so attractive. Channeling the combined effort of the raiders in the most effective direction. It can be quite beautiful. And hey, besides working with the rest of the guild, you might want to focus on establishing esprit de corps with your fellow hunters first and foremost. Being close with your classmates means you can better devise hunter-specific strategies, like for keeping your pet alive on certain fights. You all improve together, you can compromise happily on what loot you share, and you all stay motivated, even if other classes are suffering from some internal issue. That can be critical later in vanilla when folks are more likely to burn out on intense fights like Cthulhu, or taxing fights like Loatheb. As long as you, and hopefully the rest of the hunters too, bring that cheerful and energetic charm to the raid, that can be the greatest help with keeping your friends driven towards success. However, it may be that your guild defines success, that is. Anyway, gosh, I went on for a while there, didn't I? I'm sorry about that, folks. I hope what I said made sense. In the background here, we've been collecting our buffs, collecting ourselves. It is DMF week, Dark Moon Fair week, so we were able to pick up a plus damage buff in addition to our DMT buffs, in addition to our Onyxia buffs. We'll shout out the Lay of Lilies for all the healers and hunters I've given one to use it, and we'll get moving into Blackwing Lair, and get started on the very first fight, Razorgore, who, much to the chagrin of everyone, is the only fight. This area is the only area in Blackwing Lair which cannot be sped up in any way whatsoever, because Razorgore has his own pace. The boss is going to be mind-controlled by a guildie, he'll walk around the room, destroy all these eggs, and due to the cast time and cooldown on this ability, which works out in a very specific way, it's always about 5 minutes or so. So you could pop Rapid Fire at the beginning of this fight and have it up when it's time to kill Razorgore himself, but honestly, you could just go AFK on this fight too, because the melee, if you have plenty of melee, they'll just eat up everything in sight. The orcs will die very, very quickly, more quickly than you can get an aim shot off, usually. We got one off right there on one of those orcs, but You can only do that, really, if the melee are not already on top of them, because as soon as they are, that orc drops dead. You can reliably get an aim shot off on the dragon spawn, or at least more reliably. If you have like 20 warriors, maybe it's never going to work out ever, but usually. In any case, we're going to mostly be using auto shots and multi-shots on the orcs, and we'll pop off the aimed shot whenever we get the chance to fire upon a dragon spawn, because they are tougher. And regarding your pet on this fight, I've got my Zora back there on the back of this platform, and I'm gonna send him out at whatever's coming our way on occasion. And he'll go flying back there whenever he's not in use. That'll keep him safe, because all these mobs do cleave. The dragon spawn and legionnaires have some kind of cleave, and the mages have an arcane explosion, so that'll be the biggest threat to your pet on phase 1 of this fight. And FYI, for all you parsers out there, well, I'm sure you already know this, but the trash mobs at the beginning of this fight, or during phase 1 of this fight, they don't actually count towards your parse. But still, I wouldn't recommend going AFK in this fight, simply because it's not very courteous to your fellow raiders. You know, even though you're not going to be particularly useful compared to the melee, just like on phase 1 of Nefarian, still, you should be here to give them support and help out as needed. You could even drop some frost traps around, but again, it's a pretty straightforward fight, pretty easy. This is the King of the Hill strategy, by the way. This is one popular way to do it. Another way to do it is to stand in the middle of the room and shoot everything around the sides. At which point a macro for automatic targeting comes in real handy, because on this fight, if you're standing in the middle of the room, you just continuously spin around in a circle and spam your auto shot key or something, and when something pops up, you stop and shoot it, and then you keep spinning. You just keep spinning and shooting. And that's about it. So either way, very straightforward fight, very easy. It seems that Razorgore is almost done with taking out all the eggs on this in this fight, in this phase 1. And then we can move on to some more interesting fights. Speaking of parsing, though, perhaps we could have a look at the parses from this particular raid during DMF week. But honestly, I believe that certain aspects of parsing, or parses rather, can be distracting. I mean, it's interesting to see how the numbers add up, and it can be useful to review the logs and see what exactly a fellow hunter is doing that you could use to improve yourself. But you must not be distracted in your pursuit of higher numbers, of higher parses, because this is vanilla WoW. It's more about the mechanics of the raid itself than about raw numbers, raw damage. So perhaps the best indicator of good performance, or perhaps the most significant factor in performance, would be mechanical precision. Precision when it comes to executing mechanics and being reliable on that front. On that note, it is DMF week, and usually on this fight the melee wind up conflagged, or some caster winds up pulling aggro and it kills a bunch of people, so I'm extra careful about threat. And by usually, I mean it happened once and now I'm scared. I definitely could have popped rapid fire at the beginning of this fight and been fine, but I didn't want to cause any trouble and get all the melee conflagged or something, so I popped it late. Something to remember for later, certainly. I have had some good kills, but my focus after performing the mechanics is mostly on pew-pewing and having fun. If only someone had remembered to start the logs for that fight. In any case, it probably would have been low anyway due to the hesitation to pop rapid fire and go all out. But that's a-okay. We'll check out the parses for this next boss, Vaelastras, who we must sacrifice someone to in order to open the gate that leads ahead. But first, we gotta take out these here Gabbos. The Gabbo-y boys, who chuck bombs and doesn't afraid of anything. Except Zora and me, because we are the fiercest smalls. Anyway, before we even poke the boss, we still have a little bit more to do. I'm gonna make Zora stay there. I'm gonna mark up this next pack. DBM might remove the skull at some point, but the rest of the stuff will be marked up ahead of time, and we can get going on that pack ASAP. Because if there ain't marks, then how will the DPS know what to kill? And speaking of big numbers, check out what buff I don't have. Aspect of the Hawk. Whoops. Anyway, this is Vaelistraz. He's kind of a major problem for the pet because of the fire going out. He's probably going to die unless you can get a healer to check how to heal once in a while, or unless you kill him very, very fast. The kicker for your damage is you can use greater fire protection potions to absorb some of the damage, and then your aim shot will not get pushed back. And that's useful for improving your parses. And RIP all of Kraken's buffs. That's too bad. But that is the way of things. Someone must be sacrificed. And as for the parses, here they are for Vaelistraz. Not particularly good on our front. But hey, the boss died, so it doesn't really matter. We'll try harder next time. I'm gonna get up here and remark that skull. And shout at everyone to get up here. I'm going to do a ready check to make sure that everyone's ready. It seems that most of the healers and all the tanks are good to go, so we can go ahead and pull. Besides marking things up, throwing out the ready check when there might be a time where people are idling, maybe standing around for loot, or just idling in general. The ready check can help you confirm that everyone is ready enough for you to go ahead and pull the next thing, which is exactly what we did. And by the way, we are kiting some things in Blackwing Lair, but I'll try to have a closer look at the action when I can. These packs are not particularly challenging. The captains have a little debuff that's only a concern for the tanks, and they also tend to break CC. On the other mobs, that is. The Wormkins have this nasty AoE stuff going on. We're going to mark up the next pack while they're killing the rest. So the Wormkin are always slept by druids. They're hibernated. They're put into hibernation. The Seethers, they have a frenzy, so they need to be tranked once in a while. The tanks pulled this pack before I did, because the triangle was in the back. So I peeled triangle off of them once the rest of the pack was pulled. Anyway, as I was saying, the Seethers have a little frenzy effect that can be hit with the Tranq Shot, can be dispelled with the Tranq Shot. There's the market detonation, the problem with the tanks. It only causes an AoE fire blast to go out on our nearby allies if we are struck by the captain. And the flame scales, or whatever they're called, will do a charge once in a while that knocks people around. So I like to mark up the Seethers with the skull and the cross, the flame scales, secondary target, the Wormkin. It looks like they actually finished everything else before I even got back, so good on them, good on them. We, in the meantime, are going to head up to the suppression room and begin preparations. Or we would if the captain had dropped off us, but apparently our tanks couldn't catch him. So I dropped down to let them catch him more easily, and we'll run up with the rest of the raid. So the suppression room is probably the most infamous and annoying part of Blackwing Lair. It's also known as the depression room. Our tanks are going to start us off here, and this this whole sequence relies on the cooperation of all of your raiders. What the rogues are going to have to do is keep the traps down where I need to go in order to shoot the rest of the mobs that need pulling. And then they're also going to need to clear traps in front of the raid so that the raid can get where they need to go when it's time to move up. A tank is going to have to pick up whatever I'm pulling this way. I'm going to need healers on me, we're going to need to watch out for the rogues if they get found out. Obviously on the tanks too. And as for our job, we need to chain pull stuff back exactly in the way that we must. And how is it that we must? Well, when you're chain pulling stuff, the perfect way to do it is to make sure that the targets will get back to your melee DPS, your front line, as soon as the last targets die. A little bit too slow, a little bit too fast, doesn't make much of a difference, but it is something that you can observe and improve upon. Like for instance, right there, I accidentally hit one of the whelps with an arcane shot rather than their hatcher. And look at the raid back there, they've already finished up the last hatcher, so they're just standing around idling. And it looks like we got some orcs too, and I'll just mark this up real quick. The idea is that they are never idle. Unless the healers need to drink or something of the sort, it is critical that we eliminate as much idling time as possible. The raid is killing things extremely fast, so I pull the hatcher in the middle of this pack. He gets back before the orcs are dead, just a little bit, but that's much better timing. So in order to improve the speed in this room, we should understand the need for the rogues, what exactly they need to do, where they need to be, and also what the mobs do. And we also need to keep on top of certain patrols, like I look at my humanoid tracker here and observe that the orcs are just up ahead. They will be directly ahead of us as soon as we turn this corner. Anyway, the whelps, they just smack things. There's nothing special about them. The tanks can pick them up quite easily. The orcs have a shadow shock, which is, well, it can be very painful, so beware if you have all three of them on you. They also have a heal, but that's not really much of a consideration. It means they last a little bit longer. I don't believe the heal can be interrupted. And the hatchers are the most important part. They're the biggest threat to your rogues. They cause an AoE around them called Growing Flames, and what that does is, well, it's a fire damage over time effect that grows. So having multiple hatchers means they become much more dangerous that way. And by the way, we've stopped here just so that our healers can drink and we can summon someone. But the reason the hatchers are so dangerous, particularly to the rogues, is because if they cause their AoE while they pass by a rogue, it'll knock them out of stealth, the whelps will maul them, and that's certainly a detriment not only to your rogue friends, but to the entire raid, because we need them out here, and the raid needs to stop and resurrect them if they happen to die. So that's why the marks on the rogues are really useful. If you're having trouble seeing them, and I certainly do, then we can have the rogues marked up and warn one of the shapes if a hatcher will be passing by them. So that's what I try to do. And as for the rogues, they only need to move far enough up to take down all the traps that are in our way. We have a 41-yard range, so they don't need to be very far up. I'm going to flare up that trap there, and Diamond is going to have to take care of it, because that particular trap is the one that's in my way. Diamond is going up ahead though, and this is completely unnecessary. I am suppressed by this trap, and this trap is the only one in our way at the moment. Only when the raid is ready to move up do we need the traps further up cleared. And because I'm suppressed, this slows me down. So you see, this is a team effort. We rely on the rogues to clear the way for us and help us pull faster. And if we are suppressed, if we are stuck suppressed, then we'll just have to keep staying up here in range to pull the next thing instead of ever coming back. Rely on healers or fellow hunters to pull new targets back. We did get 2 hatchers, by the way, but that's fine. We'll mark one up with a skull. We'll separate them a little bit so that the growing flames does not murder the melee. The flame strikes would be a concern, but our melee are good about that. Our healers are good about that, and we're going to be drinking up very soon anyway. Now that the last hatcher is dead, we can all move up. Now would be the time to have this trap down, because only now is it in the raid, or in the way of the raid. We're going to move up just a little bit more before we drink up, I could drink up right here, but I'm going to feed my pet instead. And I suppose that's everything as it pertains to this room. But there is certainly a lot more to cover before we're done with Blackwing Lair. This is only the third boss we're on right now. But after this part is a bunch of loot pinatas, assuming Firemaw does not wipe your raid 10 times, like I've seen happen in some pugs. This is the area where we will stop and rest for a moment. Just as soon as we get there, because the traps are in the way, because the rogues are a bunch of slackerinos. Here we go on the boss, and he's got a blast wave, so be mindful that you do not get knocked back while you're heading to your spot. We are suppressed, but I'm not going to waste any time not DPSing. I'm going to move a little bit more towards that area while suppressed. The suppression aura does not really affect us like it does the other classes, like their attack speed or casting speed might be slowed down. But for us, it's just our movement speed. Unless we're in melee for some reason, in which case that, I suppose, would be slowed down. But that's quite irrelevant. A bat really helps on this boss because he does hit quite hard. But this time he dies without any shenanigans. Nothing whatsoever. Now, I'm going to mark up this next pack, but the rest of the raid is going to move back and clear out the whelps. And by the way, here are the parses for that Brood Lord. All the hunters being together is a good thing. I like it when all the hunters are together, and hopefully, ideally, near the top as well. Or having a high percentile too. Because there will be a little bit of crit luck, there will be some factors that cause you to defer, but as long as all the hunters are relatively nearby each other, that means that everyone is on the same page in terms of their own hunter mechanics, in terms of their own technique, and that way, well, you know that all the hunters are doing well. And I suppose there is something worth noting about these whelps. They do come in different colors, and the colors have certain resistances to certain magics, or outright immunities, perhaps? So, you might not be able to effectively AoE some of them, like the red whelps, with your explosive trap or a grenade, but that's what you have your entire raid around for. They can take care of everything. Well, that said, we're about to start on the lab packs, and the first pack is very forgiving. It's only 2 warlocks and some goblin technicians. The warlocks will summon a demon portal, but on Official Classic they are especially forgiving, because that demon portal may stay up, but if the warlocks are dead, then nothing comes out of the portal. The goblin technicians need to be held onto by mages or casters in general, and they chuck bombs. They can be very dangerous, so watch out for them. Seems that Firemaw is patrolling over here. We'll stay over here for the moment. He does that. Now that Firemaw's out of the way, we can start on the next pack. Our mage stood a little bit too close while attempting to flame strike the technicians, but we fired out that aim shot just in time. Saved him. We kite these here overseers on these packs too, but that won't stop me from going on about the action, and maybe we'll see a pack a little bit later. I need to feign 40 yards away so that I do not get any resists on the feign death. We don't want anyone to die, so that includes myself. It does sometimes go back onto a healer, so I do need to warn the raid about it, and if a tank can't manage to pick it up at a given time, I have to come back and fire off the distracting shot. Make sure that it sticks to someone more armored than one of those squishy healers. The next pack is marked up, but we're going to do Firemaw next. Like Vael, Firemaw does have an area effect fire attack that goes out, and that is it's a lot more painful the later into the fight that you go, or rather the more stacks of the debuff that you accrue. So the key to keeping your pet alive on this fight is watching his stacks, or watching how much damage he's taking each time one of the stacks goes out, and sending him back to cover when he's in trouble. And that goes for us too. We have to watch our stacks, move behind cover when it's time, and bandage up if the healers are strapped for mana. The healers already took care of us, so we're okay. Zora can stay out there. He's got fire resist for at least a little bit longer. I'll pull him back now, and we'll mend him up before I go back out again. My stacks are gone, so let's go back out. Again on this fight, much like with Vael, you can use greater fire protection potions, or even a fire reflector in order to ignore the stacks. And if you resist a whole bunch in a row, you can los and drop the stacks entirely after that and spend as little time as possible behind cover. As for the parses, here are those for Firemaw, nothing special. Let's move on to the next pack. But while we do, I suppose there is more I'd like to mention about Firemaw. Another thing that might kill your pet on this fight, or on his fight, we're past it now, so his fight, is if the boss turns towards your pet and breathes Shadow Flame on it, which will certainly kill it. So make sure that your pet is behind the boss at all times, and if that's not possible at a moment, send it behind cover until you can put it back out. Also, you might want to risk stepping out of cover just to fire some shots, an auto shot or a multi-shot between stacks, but Firemaw is fickle about when exactly he puts out his stacks. So I don't recommend it, because sometimes you do get the opportunity to fire out that multi-shot, and sometimes you eat another stack and have to stay behind cover for longer, and that, well, if you're a gambler, maybe you consider it worthwhile. Anyway, we've moved on to a unique trash pack in Blackwing Lair, so let's focus on these guys for now. The Worm Guards and Overseers have one particular characteristic that serves your casters very well, or might get them killed. As you can see here, the Worm Guard is running around like mad, and that's because it has a variation of mechanics, some of which may impact your tank, which is not good for the casters, because if they happen to strike the target while it's vulnerable to a certain school of magic that they are proficient in, then in that case they are more likely to pull aggro and get themselves one-shot by the Worm Guard. We'll talk more about those guys later. For now, our group will be moving into this little alcove once the big guy is dead, and we can start on this next trash pack. Now, I've got a shield up, but it does fade, and the importance of the shield when you're kiting is that those bombs thrown by the technicians can daze you. So because I'm dazed, I call for support, and our bear comes and picks up this Overseer. This will give us a chance to look at the pack up close. So those warlocks over there, we're going to kill them first just so that they don't spawn any Fel Guards. It'll spare us the trouble. The Spellbinders are pretty much spell immune. They can be stunned. I've seen the rogues and warriors stun them. And they could also be interrupted, which is good because they otherwise cast a Flame Strike, potentially. They also polymorph random people. The Technicians, as you've seen, chuck the bombs, very dangerous. Need to keep a close eye on them. And my goodness, would you look at how quickly that was over. We were up here real fast, drinking up before the next pack, long before the last one was finished, and as soon as everyone was ready, we could go ahead and pull. This is another sort of area that requires coordination in Blackwing Lair, because, you know, the mages need to be on top of threat on the technicians, the tanks need to have everything, and there's AoE going out all over the place. So one thing that I wanted to point out about this trash pack is that if you're looking to practice keeping your pet alive in raids, this sort of trash pack is ideal for your practice, because the warlocks will be casting Rain of Fire around. Besides their demon portal, they also do that. The Overseers have physical cleave in melee range. The Spellbinders, of course, have their Flame Strike, which I mentioned, and the Goblins chuck their bombs. So you'll need to be watching for any Flame Strikes that pop up, for any rains of fire that is occurring, and keep your pet out of all that while DPSing the targets that you must focus on. And besides kiting, the ways that we hunters may help with this, with these packs, with these lab packs, or so they're called, is we can help pull certain targets to tank spots. Some of my fellow hunters are up there with me, shooting the skull target and bringing it all the way to the tank spot as soon as they possibly can. And another one is nearby to support me in case I mess up with this here Overseer like I just did. I got up too quickly from feigned death, so I run right towards it. I've got my deterrence up, so I will not be hit once. And as you can see, my fellow hunter, who has been watching my back, was on task, ready to take the aggro on this thing. We are done with the lab packs, so we'll help finish them off. There's no need to go all the way up there ahead of everyone. The spellbinders are just about dead anyway, and it looks like the technicians are too. Well, I suppose we can go up ahead of everyone else and mark up the next pack. The worm guards. I should go on about them too. These big guys are incredibly fast. They cannot be kited unless you're making use of, say, rocket boots, preferably goblin, and even then, if they happen to fail during the effect, you will have to feign death immediately or risk death. Besides that, their various mechanics include forcing the tank to spin around. They'll do a whirlwind, so we call it spinning. And if the tank is spinning, they'll be damaging nearby friendly targets, which is naturally one of the biggest threats for your pet. The good news is that these guys are only a problem really in melee, so if your pet is low in HP, and if you're watching it, just pull it out, and it'll be okay. It will be okay, probably, unless one runs into melee with you. Also, because the casters have a tendency to take aggro on these very often, I do try to watch out for any that are running for my allies, and make sure that I'm second on threat or something so they're running for a more armored target. Also, that dragon boss over at the end of the far end of the room, he sometimes patrols down the ramp. He is a serious nuisance, and that's why these guys are pulled all the way back here. Because look at him, he's coming down during one of the most difficult trash packs in Blackwing Lair. And who designed that? Who conceived that? A boss on patrol. What a jerk. Anyway, Ebonroc has been pulled, and this fight is fantastic for practicing your weaving on. His hitbox does not change in size. You can go right up to the melee range, and as long as the tanks don't move him around too much, and they shouldn't, he should remain quite where he is, then you can weave right on in. In fact, we'll go up to him and smack him, even though we're dual wielding at the moment, simply because I want to. We'll join the fellow melee hunters with their fun. So during our typical cycle, it's possible auto, aimed, auto, multi, auto, auto, back into aimed. So between those two auto shots is the time, if any, to throw in a Raptor Strike. Well, I don't imagine the timing works out consistently that way. It's surely different for Ashray Thul. I would need to pick one up again to remember entirely. But the point is, whenever your aimed and multi-shots are on cooldown, you can weave. By the way, here are the parses for that fight. We're memeing a little bit, so we're below the other hunters, but still not very far below. Next boss. This one, rather than having tank mechanics that are important, this one has hunter mechanics that are important. We need a Tranq Shot rotation. You can do this with 2 hunters, but 3 is very comfortable, 4 is extremely comfortable. And our Tranq Shot order is Dire, Rock, me, and then Athius. This boss is not quite the same to weave on, because his hitbox does increase in size when he frenzies, which naturally will dead zone you, and if you are dead zoned around the time that you must use your tranquilizing shot, then that's not good at all. So yeah, you do have to stay a little bit further back than minimum range, because that minimum range will change. Perhaps a flare would come in handy for keeping tabs on the secondary minimum range. Shorter fight though, so here are the parses. We're higher up this time. Oh, and I'm not certain that I mentioned this, but first let me do this pull really quick. We'll use the multi-shot aiming trick to hit only 2 and make sure that they don't all pile on the skull tank. It looks like they're safe, and it looks like Stuyven got a nature vulnerability one, so that one's never going to leave him. Anyway, where was I? Oh, yes. On any of the 3 drakes, Firemaw, Flamegor, Ebonroc, they can use Shadow Flame. They can breathe Shadow Flame on anyone in front of them. Your pet cannot wear a cloak that protects it from the Shadow Flame. So if there's any point where your tanks have faced the boss towards your pet, you might want to hit that follow key to bring it back towards you, and then send it back in afterwards. It's a neat alignment trick to ping pong your pet. We'll be using that trick on Nefarian when he fears the pet naturally. And with that, it seems these big fellas are dead, so we are on to the last 2 bosses of Blackwing Lair, Chromaggus and Nefarian. Nothing much to remark upon regarding Chromaggus. He's one of the more complicated fights in Blackwing Lair, comparatively speaking, so that actuality is ultimately meaningless, I suppose. You might need a mana potion or your lily root to compensate for the sheer length of the encounter. Other than executing a Tranq Shot rotation with your fellow hunters, you'll also need to duck out of his line of sight once in a while. That's about it. About your pet, assuming you're bringing it out of Chromaggus' line of sight along with you, the only thing that might kill it is one of Chromaggus' debuffs. They don't deal much damage, but they will whittle your pet down over time. Just 1 or 2 mend pet casts while waiting on the boss to breathe can keep it alive for the whole fight. At this point, there's nothing much you can do to speed up the rest of the instance. It's only boss fights. We'll have a look at those fights, but I want to emphasize the importance of quickly clearing the trash. The trash in Blackwing Lair, for the most part, is more mechanically involved than the bosses. The most impactful thing you can do in general, the thing hunters are well equipped to do actually, is assist with the trash. Whether you're the point man or just watching his back, put your abilities to use in service of your allies on the trash. Bring those mobs to the tank spot, hold that overseer so it's not smacking your poor healer, and if your fellow hunter is in trouble, fire out that distracting shot. So, for improving speed in general, don't get caught up in parses and look for the idle time you could potentially kill, without going too far. Recently I had to slow down a mage before he pulled that next lab pack, since the healers were totally So after you've got your guild all riled up for speedruns, don't forget to slow them down where necessary. No crossbow, surprise surprise. It's only an alt-raid weapon, I swear. We've seen 3 in the alt-raid and only 1 in the main raid. Went to dire. Here's the parses for Chromaggus, by the way, and all the hunters are together, so that's good. Anyway, where was I? Oh, yes. With AQ around the corner, your guild will no doubt seek to complete the prior raids with greater swiftness and efficiency. So I hope my perspective proves useful for your own introspection. Maybe helps you cut some corners. But enough of that for now. We're on the final boss, so let's go observe some good hunter memes. My hunter core on Nefarian prefers to ignore mechanics entirely. We do not unequip our bows, we don't swap weapons at all. Instead, we drop a repair bot every week and ignore the mechanics. We just repair our weapons and also provide repairs for the rest of the guild between Blackwing Lair and Molten Core. I'm going to move over here because this is where my melee are, and we would like for them to benefit from True Shot Aura. We'll also be witnessing the first part of the threefold meme on Nefarian this week, right here. The Hunter exclusive meme, the one that involves only us and our respective shenanigans. And much like with Razorgore Phase 1, the Draconids that spawn at the beginning of this fight will be mauled to death instantly by the melee. So there's little we can do other than stand here and fire off the auto-shot and multi-shot on new targets. When a chromatic Draconid pops up, that's when we get the opportunity, most likely, to fire out an aim shot. And we will try to keep a frost trap down here. Not that they need it, but it should help to make this even more one-sided than it already is. The Draconids can come in a number of colors, and some of them may be a threat to your pet. I don't bother to remember which colors, but if the melee start shouting and complaining about the Draconids on their side, Observe the color that they're complaining about. By the way, Oski got mind-controlled there, and have a close look right here. He's got the blue aura from Viper Sting. So Rockbow fired out one of those on him, and that karma's gonna come back and bite him in the ass in a moment. But, excuse my language, in the butt. Anyway, it's gonna come back and bite him. We're going to continue fighting off these Draconids, and we're going to be watching the chat, because as soon as Nefarian yells, that is the time to begin dismissing the pet. Because Nefarian will breathe on the entire raid between Phase 1 and 2, or Phases 1 and 2. Now, if you do not have a cloak to protect even yourself, you can actually run behind Nefarian's throne, and it will not hit you at all. But we are simply going to dismiss our pet. Now, have a close look at Rockbow on the side there. Look who forgot his cloak. I'm sure Oski enjoyed that sight very much. But wait, it gets even better, because Rockbow was the one who was supposed to drop the bot this week, so guess what happens next?
Bruh.
Yep, that was 40G down the drain. Karma just came back to bite not only Rockbow in the butt, but all the hunters for that transgression of Viper stinging one of our precious healers. I'm sorry, Oski, please forgive us, and Karma, please forgive us too. I think she's forgiven us. We've not had an incident like that since then. Well, the other day, Rockbow did happen to one-shot one of our mages with the Ash Candy Raptor Strike, but that wasn't his fault, so I don't think that counts. I love a good meme. Anyway, we're getting Nefarian down pretty low here. He's at 50%, and if you notice, our pet occasionally goes running in fear, or flying in fear, and he may be positioned a little bit too far in front of Nefarian, or too far behind, and in either location he'll get cleaved, or struck with the tail, or breathed on, or some other problem like that. So whenever the fear goes out, simply pull your pet back to you, and then send him back in. And there he will be, right where he's supposed to be, with the melee. It's 20% now, Nefarian is at 20%, so the skeletons will be popping up any moment now, and we are going to go help take care of them. We're going to check out this Iron Grenade, help disrupt their attacks a little bit. And it seems that the mages are right on top of them. If we wanted to get some good numbers out of this, we'd use a Sapper Charge or some Stratholme Holy Water. That works really well in this fight. Looks like a couple of them are on the tanks, but the boss is dead, so all was well. It seems Prester has dropped. That's always a lovely sight. Here are the parses for that Nefarian. As you can see, Athius is way up there, no doubt thanks to a Sapper Charge. Well, since that was the final boss, we are officially done in here. I hope you've enjoyed tonight's episode in all its glory and memes. This was a fun raid night, and I'm glad to have brought it to ya. Here's looking forward to AQ40. FYI, I've been through AQ and Nax on Light's Hope, so although it may, or surely will, defer on Official Classic, please do feel free to inquire to me about your curiosity surrounding the future raids. I may not upload quite often, but I am often around the Ravager Den. That's the Discord server linked in the description of this episode. Drop by any time, or in the comments on this very episode. It's always my pleasure to chat with my fellow hunters and relish in the joys of this fun class. What happens next? Well, I'm not entirely sure. Maybe we'll jump straight into the Temple of Ankh-Kiraj. I'd love to revisit Molten Core now that we're 60, but there's so much else to look at. I suppose time will tell. And in the meantime, I'll be around those places that I mentioned. Anyway, that's all for tonight, folks. I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.